This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Folks, welcome to the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
And today we are going to talk about why we do this podcast.
Yeah, it's just, it's a couple friends that have tuned in and had some really good positive feedback for us. Asked like, well, why do you even do this? I'm like, I guess we just do. And then the more I thought about it, there's lots of reasons that I enjoy doing this podcast with you. I think, one of the things is just start something, right? Whatever it is in life, whether it's like, you want to get an advanced degree or you want to get a better job or you want to get healthy or whatever it is, you just start something. Mm-hmm. And I know that I've had this tilted table idea bouncing around in the back of my noggin since 2016.
Wow.
Because I remember exactly where I was at when someone asked me, have you thought about having your own podcast? And I said, yes, I have. And they said, well, what would you call it? And I was like, oh, that's easy. I've already had that in my brain. It's called the Tilted Table. So as far as like, why do we do this? I think it's great to take a walk down memory lane and reminisce and share a lot of these stories. And a lot of the stories that we've gone over are stories I think everybody has. Just you don't really hear them because, most of the podcasts that are floating around out there are like, let's talk about personal finances or, political deals. So I wanted to make sure, number one, this isn't your or my job.
Right.
Number two is like to have a lot of fun with it and not end up having to like, battle and, trolls in the comment section. Right. It's meant to be entertaining and it's meant to be fun, not just for us, but for the people that tune in and, have those same shared experiences and might not have thought about Mad Magazine, in the last 20 years.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Wow. Yeah. I think most people start podcasts for financial reasons. Like they think that can, if I can create this thing and maybe I can somehow get viral or get followers and push it through and start making money, which is great. I think everybody would love that. I mean, I would love to get paid millions of dollars to do this. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's happening. And I'd never expect that to happen. I never went into this thinking that it was going to be anything other than us just talking about whatever the fuck we want to talk about for an hour. And the second thing is, if you want to make money, then you are automatically kind of painting yourself into certain corners. Mm-hmm. You're right. You're going to have to do something that people want to listen to that could generate large amounts of view. And I think that when you look at what the most popular, let's say, YouTube channels are usually personal finance. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, all of a sudden now I got to create a finance podcast or I got to create a true crime podcast. Those are real popular, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great. That's perfectly fine. When I was thinking about a podcast, my first thought was the exact opposite of that because it's easy to find the true crime and the personal finance and whatever you want. There's football channels, there's wrestling channel, whatever.
Everything under the sun. And
I know everyone that starts those channels, I think generally are fans of whatever it is that they're talking about or they're knowledgeable in the subject that they're talking about. Most, not all. Some do it strictly, as a money grab. Mm-hmm. But those already exist. And the one podcast that I'm sure it does exist. I can't find it. And it's probably the reason why, we don't get a lot of views. People can't find us is we don't have a specific subject. But sometimes I think that's what's lacking on the internet right now with podcasts is that we don't have a specific, angle or subject or area of information that we cover. We just randomly say, just turn on the fucking mic and start talking. Right. When we come up with subjects, that's our preparation. Well, what do you want to talk about? Well, what about, strange restaurants we've been to or these kind of experiences, and just start babbling. And yeah, I think that that's lacking. in the podcast world, and we obviously deliver that for people that actually like to listen to this type of stuff. That it's not political, it's not financial, it's not controversial. We're not here to raise a bunch of awareness about something or fight for some cause.
It could be controversial. We did get banned for a hot second on YouTube.
Yeah, but that's because we talked about something that they don't like. We said the key word.
Yes.
The C word.
Yes, the C word.
Right?
The
So
infamous C word.
Yeah, and I'm sure that if you go through all of our podcasts, and this is 27, so I'm sure you can find stuff that is probably somewhat controversial, but I don't think we take controversial stances on them.
No, not at all. It's a very middle of the road, and it's more introspective than anything else. Or hey, do you remember that one time? And to laugh at ourselves like through those moments. So I guess one of the funny things is, well, not funny, more interesting is for the first time in my life in 2024, I actually set a goal. Not that there's things in my life I've never wanted to accomplish, but I never sat down at the beginning of the year and said, I am going to do this one thing.
Right.
And the one thing that I wanted to do is, I'm severely asthmatic. I got to use a, inhaler every day.
I did not know this.
Oh yeah, man. If you a year and a half, 2 years ago, if you would have asked me to run 50 yards, the answer would have been I can't do that. So the goal I set for myself was to walk/run. I bought one of those military tactical vests, to run 1,311 miles. And Cookie's like, that is such a random number. How did you even come up with that? And I said, well, that's the distance equivalent to doing 50 marathons in 12 months, which I think is a huge miles, literally a mile.
That's a lot of marathons. I know runners that don't do that.
It's a lot of mileage. I burned through 6 pairs of shoes. So I hit that mark. So in terms of being a listener, I would say I'm one of the kings of listening to podcasts. And one of the things that I'd say is my favorite type of content is when it's just, the proverbial fly on the wall, overhearing two people's conversation about, obviously really cool, interesting subjects are great, but just listening to people talk about genuine, authentic, neat stories from their lives. Those are the ones I really enjoy as I'm out on the road getting my mileage in.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think we deliver that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love these very obscure stories.
Well, sure. Yeah. And I know that when we first met, I think you were the one that had proposed to me about doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when Joe and I first met, we just started talking, and we were just making each other laugh at whatever stories we were talking about and sharing experiences. Found out we had a lot in common with our experiences, I think, growing up and things that we remember. And, do you remember this? No, shit, yeah, I can't believe you remember that. And, so when that came up, and you had brought that, I don't think you didn't say it let's do a podcast. I think you threw it out there man, we should do a podcast.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly how I put it.
Right, yeah. And so I remember that happening. And I remember Love asking me, she was like, oh, you should. It'd be fun. You guys, got a good back and forth. And I was thinking well, I've already done a podcast, and I talked about it before on previous episodes. I did do a podcast with a friend of mine, Mike, and we did it for probably maybe 10 or 11 episodes. And it actually was fun, but there were some issues with our, I think, us coming together.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
Right? Mike's a great guy, but I think as far as putting together a podcast, it probably wasn't a good mix for that kind of thing. So that fell apart. I did attempt at one point with another friend of mine, Tim, but I ran into kind of a problem with Tim. I don't think that he is a person that could carry at least 50% of a podcast. He maybe could do 20% or 10%. And I proposed a little bit of a problem, not because, I don't want to carry the bulk of the weight of the episodes. But who wants to hear one person talk?
That would be a great
have
title.
Another guy coming in going oh, well, that's wild. Tell me more. That's
you could name that podcast the quote, listening to yourself podcast.
Listening to yourself podcast. So I kind of gave it up. And over time I had thought about, a number of ways to do it, because there's no way I was going to do a podcast by myself. People do that. And then there's very successful, YouTube channels and podcasts that it's just one person. I didn't want to do that. This isn't, there's a lot of work involved when you're doing a podcast. There's, you got to record it, and you got to, put all the stuff in and mix it and do all that kind of stuff. And stuff like that to me, any kind of artistic endeavors, I prefer to do them with other people. That's why I was in a band for years. I certainly didn't pick up a guitar and just start singing like, well, I am Sean Landon Clark solo. That's not as fun as being able to work with people in creative endeavors.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm not doing this. It wouldn't be as fun. It'd be more work. You know, I'm doing the same amount of work I would do if I was doing it by myself, but this is fun. Doing it by yourself, I think, is somewhat isolating, and I think it feels like work to me, right?
Yeah.
So I always just kind of ditched the idea. The only idea I came up with for doing a podcast, it would require a camera, so it would be a videoed podcast. And then I thought to myself, like, that's a ton of work, and I really don't know how to do that. That's
a lot of work.
Yeah. I had this, I don't know where I got it from. I had a Muppet-style puppet.
Did you still have this?
I do not have it. I sold it on eBay years ago. But it was a Muppet-style puppet, and it was like legit. It was actually, the puppet was made by Ex-Cons. It was a company that makes these puppets. And of course, why they would make these puppets is for, like, you know, people who do puppetry. But, you know, like, they would sell them to schools, and teachers would, I'm sure, use them and whatnot. And they were like high quality puppets, right? And
I've never heard of it.
And they're all made by ex-cons. So I bought it, and my idea was if I could film a podcast and I would have a host, it would be the puppet. So I would have to actually, you know, record the pod. Of course, it couldn't be done live, right? I'd record the podcast, and it would have to be a conversation between two people. And of course, would have to either use like a voice changer, or, like, you know, if I was talented enough to try to, you know, maybe change my voice and make it sound like something else. I don't know, whatever I would do. I'm not that good at that. And then, you know, basically have a scripted conversation and then record it in a way that would sound natural, and it would have overlap. Like, obviously, you know, we overlap each other.
This is a great idea.
Right? And then you would film this and film it, and it looked like, when you watch the video, it looked like, you know, I'm Sean Landon Clark, and this is, you know, my partner, whatever his name was. I don't think I ever gave the puppet a name. And then, you know, you would have, the puppet would be the co-host.
I think this is a genius idea. Like Muppet Puppet.
Yeah, and again, I think it would be cool that, and I say cool in this way. The final product would probably be pretty awesome, but the amount of work, I think, would be a massive undertaking.
A full-time job.
Yeah, and I'm not interested. Obviously, I don't have the time. You know, again, if I was getting paid to do this stuff, and I guess that's I guess technically it's like, well, that's the whole point. You start this thing and it catches fire, and next thing you know, this is my job. I am the podcast that has the co-host that is a fucking puppet, and, you know, whatever I would do, whatever we would talk about. Obviously, the puppet, I don't know. Do you treat the puppet as a real human, like it's full on dropping like serious ass knowledge, or is the puppet comic relief and the puppet says insane shit? Like, I don't even know where you go.
I think either of those are great. There's two Instagram creators that I follow. Both basically do the exact same thing, and I'm not sure which one is better, but it's like a foul-mouthed Elmo.
Okay. Yeah.
And those Elmo accounts are pretty darn funny.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Elmo, is that in that voice?
Yeah.
Well, I actually think that if you made the puppet serious, that actually was something. One, I'm not sure it has been done. I'm dropping ideas. You people could be ripping me off right now. I'm making a bunch of money. Just remember, these are all timestamps. So if I see this, I'm going to lay some lawsuits down, and I want some compensation. That's all. I'm not. You can do it. I just want to cut of the action.
Absolutely.
Right? If you had the puppet be completely serious, like not a joke, like it could be a real human being saying serious stuff and maybe debating about things and laying down ideologies or whatever it is you guys are talking about, that at some point, if you caught fire, people would obviously disagree with you, but they're actually disagreeing with the puppet. And then you take that puppet on live debates, and like you'd be like I like watching Piers Morgan.
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Right, and so you have the panel, right, and all of a sudden you just see a puppet there, and like there's no joke going on. Like the puppet is straight legit, like coming with fire.
Like an actual, you know how Twitter had like the blue check verification.
Yeah,
it'd be like a definite verified guest.
Yes, he would hit the circuit. And I think the funniest thing about that would be that at some point, if you were good enough, now am I good enough to, obviously I would be operating the puppet, I would assume, right? So I would be me, you know, having to debate somebody. It's just I'm doing it through a puppet. At some point, though, if I was good enough and I could lay down a good enough debate, that there would be a point in time where some serious person, let's say like Jordan Peterson, is sitting there arguing with a puppet. That would be so sweet.
Especially if if your knowledge on whatever that topic happened to be would be superior to the person you were debating.
Yes.
And they lost the debate to a puppet.
Yeah, and then it's like they're getting heated.
What the hell do you know? You're a fucking puppet. Why don't you put down that puppet and show your face?
Like they just lose it.
Oh my, the comic relief. So yeah.
But that's like, to me, that's like 2025, Earth. Is that at some point you're going to be having that most heated debate and just throwing down with a puppet. And even like Ben Shapiro, who is I think considered, like a lot of people consider him like sort of, at one point they called him the Grim Reaper of debate. Like he was really difficult to debate. Just all of a sudden, it's like it's gotten to the point where the puppet has to go up against Ben Shapiro. And Ben Shapiro has to take the puppet seriously. And they have a hardcore debate. And here's Ben Shapiro arguing with a puppet.
I do think it's a great idea for a podcast, and I'm proud of you, man. I've never heard any of these formatting ideas.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. These are things that have come across my brain.
Do you have like a notepad where you write these things down?
No, that's pretty sad because there's things that I've come up with that over time I've forgotten about, and then they might resurface in a way like, oh yeah, no, it's an idea I had years ago. Shit.
About a year ago, I started, same thing. I didn't write things down. I'd be somewhere and whatever random idea would pop in the back of my head. I'm like, that is genius. And, 7 seconds later, I totally forgot that I even had that thought.
Yeah.
So I started that, it was about a year ago. Whenever things will come to the forefront, I'll grab my phone and just quickly write down even just the framework of whatever that idea is and go back, a week later or whatever and look through them, and some of them are great and some of them are like, well, that was stupid,
right?
But just getting into that rhythm of actually writing things down.
Yeah, I think another reason that we do this podcast is that this is pretty cathartic for me, at least.
I agree. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you can go out and go hang out with friends and talk with friends or family or whatever. I just think this is more cathartic. I guess even if people don't listen to this podcast, and I was telling you downstairs that I think the most downloads we were getting is somewhere between like 80 and 100. So we're not getting a ton of listens on YouTube.
But it's more than I figured.
Yeah. I
thought it'd be like my mom. Shout out, Mom. Hi.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like 2 people listening. I mean, our YouTube videos get 0 almost sometimes. I think the most that we have on any particular YouTube one is maybe like 30 views. So it's really low. And I mean, I think on the newer ones, you see like 2 views, 3 views. I don't know who's listening through YouTube. And I mean, part of the problem is if you go to YouTube, it's just that still card. There's no video. And I think most people, when they're listening to audio, are going to go to Spotify or Apple Music. So they're going to find more of it there. So, at the end of the day, it's like almost like somebody might say like, well, why do it if, no one's listening? Well, reality of it is someone's listening. Well, and I only need one person to hear what I'm saying for this to be cathartic. But even at the end of the day, if it was 0, what if we were like 27 episodes in and there isn't one single person on this planet that even listened to it?
It was still worth it.
I'd still do it because I would actually look at it like, wow, that's got to be some kind of record. How do you have this many episodes and not one person has ever listened to this thing at all? And I would keep doing it just to find out, like, when is the first person going?
How long can you make this streak last?
Yeah, like, there's got to be at some point that you're going to see one view and like, shit, someone finally listened 38 episodes in or whatever.
You got to like list that on your resume under skills and accomplishments. Have produced 37 podcasts without a single listen.
Right. So, I mean, that's, I think, another part of it too is, I think a lot of people look at this as being like, well, if you're not getting listens or, you're going on 27 episodes and you guys are barely even on any kind of radar. And it's not the point for me. I could have 1 million views or no views. And I don't know if the experience would be any less for me.
It would be the same for me.
Yeah. So I think that generally speaking, when you tell people you have a podcast, that's the first thing people, I think, seem to think that the goal is. And I'm not saying that's not a goal. I mean, again, anytime you do anything, people want validation, and if you are doing a really good job, the assumption is that if you're doing something really well, people will come and, it'll have famous or not famous, but have some kind of following.
Like cachet.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like, well, if you don't have any views, you must not be good. Well, no, I don't have any views because people aren't, downloading and listening to it. Right. So I understand that. And I think a lot of people think that, well, why would you do it if you're not getting at least, I guess, a moderate amount of views? But that's YouTube, and I don't put a lot of stock in YouTube. Nothing against YouTube. I don't put a lot of stock in them. I lean on
zero for podcasts because there's no video component. And I personally would never go on to YouTube to search for an audio format only of anything.
Yeah, I think when I did the podcast with Mike, we didn't do any kind of social media promotion. We just did the podcast, and it's the same format. We just have the still of the name of our podcast. And I think that we were getting, I'd say 100 views a video, but that was also like in 2013 or 14. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I think the algorithms are different, that it wasn't as saturated. And I think even when we did it, I remember at the time thinking like maybe we're too late on the bus to do something like this, not realizing that it wasn't too late. The podcast actually got bigger over time, and I think Joe Rogan was kind of the ball that smashed the window. And once Rogan blew up, then it seemed like everybody and their freaking brother
had a podcast.
He was starting a podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
I think there's also something, at least for me too, cathartic is definitely the right word. But having discipline to discipline itself, because it takes time. And number one, I love, you're my conversations and hanging out and doing this, but also that we've gotten into a regular routine over an extended period of time. And it's just something, that we both bookmark on our calendar and we actually look forward to.
Sure.
And it'd be really easy, kind of like all of the January 1st gym goers. I'm going to do this thing.
Yep.
I'm going to crush this. And then, by January 20th or whatever, they stop showing up at the gym.
Well, looking at my gym and how crowded it's been in the last couple of weeks, they haven't given up just yet. I hope it's soon.
Yeah, I was going to say first week of February is typically when it happens.
Is it? Okay, good.
I had two buddies that managed respective large gyms. And they're like, oh, dude, yeah, January, you're not getting, no staff is getting any time off during that month. He's like, middle of February, you can take a week off, no problem.
Good. Yeah.
So I think having, both of us having that discipline and consistency is also a huge thing.
Yeah. I think that also goes in with a little bit of pride and ego, that when you say, hey, I'm going to start something, and you don't follow through with it. And especially something like this, because this is public, so people can,
check you.
Yeah. When's the last time you uploaded a video or uploaded a podcast? Shit, you were hitting it every week for a while, and then it was every other week, and then it was once a month, and then it just suddenly just stops, right? And so, there's definitely that air of discipline. And I think anything you do with consistency and you put discipline into it, this may not amount to much. The podcast, people really don't listen to it, or you're not that popular, but that discipline is going to transfer over into other parts of your life.
100%.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. And I think even after I did the podcast with Mike, one of the reasons why I didn't push real hard to I get back on that horse and do another podcast was because I'm thinking to myself, if I do this, it's got to be a situation that's at least not, and I don't know if there's a such thing as a completely ideal situation, but it's got to be ideal enough that I know that we can do this every week and we can put something out every week, because I don't
quality, not just random nonsense.
Right.
I mean, we both like to talk about random things, but
I think random nonsense can be quality.
But the end result is exactly that, quality.
Yeah, and again, I think it does lean into that a pride and ego a little bit, where so it doesn't matter if people from around the world aren't listening to us. Everyone that we know, our personal friends, they all know about this friggin' podcast. And I know that if it stopped at 27, at some point, you still doing that?
For sure, it would come up.
And I got too much pride and ego to say I don't know, man. It just, I'm lazy like that, or whatever. I'm not that person that's going to do that. I think everybody has started things that they've given up on. and I'm no exception to that rule.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like, I do my best anytime I start something to see it through.
Yep.
And I think like when I wrote a book, I want to write a book, but at least a book has a beginning and an end. I'm done. Here we go. It's going to be published or whatever it is. Something like this is a different animal because there is no specific end in mind. If we started this podcast and titled it 1,000 episodes and we're done podcast, at least I would know like all I have to do is get to 1,000 and we're done. So that's the other part of this is that ultimately this is open-ended, and if you're committed to this, how long are you committed to it for? And I'm gonna say I'm gonna keep doing it.
I'm in, man. It's just part of my routine. It's like, getting my walks in every morning or going to the gym or being diligent with, books or even the other podcasts that I listen to. It's just part of my regular course of being, I guess is a way of putting it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of YouTube channels I've watched. I'll stumble upon them randomly, and you see like one video pop up and you're like, oh, it's really cool content. And then, the algorithm will show you another episode or another video, and you're clicking on them, and eventually you're going to click on, the person and get to their main YouTube page. And I'll click on the first thing I do, I'll click on videos to see all their videos, and they're always outlined from, newest to oldest.
Oh yeah.
And then you open up and it's like, newest one was 2 years ago, and you're like, see, like, I mean, it's already a dead channel and I'm just getting into it, and that deflates me a little bit. I hope people, they open up YouTube or anything, if they go on, Apple or Spotify or whatever, all the platforms that we're on, that, when they see the last episode, it isn't more than a week old. Right. Try to be consistent. Yep. Monday, Tuesdays when we usually publish. That's mostly on me because sometimes I can't do it on Monday. So I usually do it on Tuesday, but I don't think we've ever gone past Tuesday. It's always on a Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah,
every week.
Yeah, and then again, you just having that mental fortitude to be consistent and to not be like, oh, I'm busy, because right. And I really appreciate you for doing all the sound engineering and editing and whatnot, and then I'll handle like the Instagram post. Using your Buzzsprout writing.
Okay.
And I don't think I've ever told you this, but I've never once edited your writing because
there was a couple of times you probably should. I've caught a couple of mistakes and went back and edited them before you got your hands on it.
Okay. Because every time I'm like, man, these are like the greatest quips ever, like zingers every single time, and it doesn't require any active editing on my part.
Yeah, well, I have some background and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I did radio in college, so I got that background. I mean, my bachelor's degree is in journalism. I did journalism for a long time. I do write, so I'm usually pretty good. But I don't know what quips, like I guess it would be a form of advertising.
Yeah. And
I took a couple of advertising, and I say a couple, I'm like literally 2 maybe advertising classes, because you could use those as part of journalism. They fit in the same realm, but they covered some kind of requirement. But that's the only real experience I have in like how do you write a tagline to, let's say, a television show or a radio show that gets people to that's something I might be interested in. So but I'm creative enough that I can put together, I think, a fairly decent quip.
Oh, is this where at the point we tell people to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and all the good stuff?
Yeah, you should do that at the Tilted Table 1 on all major platforms, but Instagrams, Facebooks, YouTubes, and 1 is the number 1.
The number 1.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think we have an X account.
Yeah, we have an X account as well. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. And I don't think X is kind of a pain because I can't really describe the episode on X. If I do, then I have to leave out all the hashtags.
Well, I don't think you do. That's the thing with the X algorithm now, is you don't need any hashtags.
Oh, really?
Their Grok, the AI, will actually scan all of the text.
Oh.
So you're encouraged to not. I mean, shoot, Elon posted about this, I think yesterday. Is don't use hashtags.
Oh, well, so it sucks. I know very little about social media. I'm terrible at it.
I wouldn't say I'm good.
You're a hell of a lot better than me. That's for damn sure.
I can clunk my way through certain things.
I mean, one thing I'd like to change about our social media is, like, if you look at our Instagram, it's the same picture. It just says episode 1, 2, 3, 4 available. But I don't know what to say. Like, I wouldn't know, like, what else to post.
I think it's like posting. Well, it's like a label. It's like Coca-Cola, right? It's just the label, and the content number, just to refresh things in the algorithm.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about in terms of like other stuff. Like I don't even know. See,
part of this is your real identity is hidden because you operate under your nom de plume.
Well, I have an Instagram for Sean Landon Clark, but it looks very similar to the Tilted Table. It's actually just links to my articles, and they're all the same picture with the title of the article. And you should click this link and read my article. I don't have anything else. When my book comes out in March, I'm going to have I have a website. I'm going to have to do some kind of Instagram stuff, but again, I don't write to make money. It's not my job to make money at it. So I don't know how much time I'm actually going to put into a lot of that stuff, because that seems like a whole job in of itself. And I'm not going to hire like a firm to do it. I just don't think it's worth it to me.
No. That is excited about your upcoming book.
Oh, sorry, man, getting over a slight flu. Yeah, I'm excited too. We'll see what happens. The publishing company, I don't think is going to put a whole lot of push behind it. It was published, I think, and again, I've talked about this off air. I think it's largely more of a favor. That's the way I would describe it. But they've hit me up, and actually they hit me up about, I should do more social media. Like, you need to get your followers up and whoop-de-whoop-de-woo. And my first thought was like, isn't that what your job is supposed to be? Like, historically, publishing companies promote it, but that shows you how much faith they have in it. And like I said, I would describe it, if I use a word, I'd say they published it because it's more of a favor, less that they really believe that the book, is something that they can sell. But I'm riding with it. They published it. It's going to be on, all major platforms. Is it going to be in bookstores? It's possible. I learned how bookstores get books and why books are on their shelves. And so it's possible it can land in bookstores. If I really wanted to, I could probably get them in bookstores if I personally, push the book out. But again, that's kind of a publisher's job to do that.
Right.
At the end of the day, if I'm doing the writing and I'm doing all the publicity, then I would just self-publish. Like I wouldn't have to, how much time this is taking for them to do this? I could have had this book out months ago. Right. So, and I've gone on writing forums, and I'm in a bunch of different writing groups, and I've talked with people that have self-published versus traditional publishing, and it's kind of a mixed bag, but it seems like depending on the publisher, and if you get a really good publisher that believes in the material, they'll do a lot of that promotion. You're going to have to do some, but they do the bulk of it. Where I think that with the more smaller publishers, I think they haven't, one thing that they're trying to accomplish is they want to have a library of authors and people that they've worked with. It builds their publishing business.
Sure.
But they don't have the money, and they may publish something, but they may not promote it, and I'm going to push that onto you, because really what they want is to have you in the bank. Like, we have, 100 books currently that we've published from, 45 authors, and that makes them look bigger. And maybe they can get more traction with getting maybe more established people to sort of work with them.
And like in the background, they're really just a P.O. box.
Yeah, possibly. Okay. Yeah. So I don't really know that much about it. When I did this, my first thought was it would be cool just to get my book published, where I could, go and buy my own book. Like, hey, look, it's my fucking book.
Do you get your picture on the back cover?
I haven't seen the back cover design. They've given me some front cover design options. I picked one. Okay. So I haven't seen the back yet. I have not been asked to send them a photo, so they may not. But with this company, it could happen. It wouldn't surprise me. I have pictures if they want them.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Is it like did you go to like JCPenney's and do like those pull down backdrop type pictures?
And it's probably one of the biggest failures on my part doing this is I've never gone and got, like, let's say professionally done like headshots. Now I do have some photos that other people have taken of me, people I know who are photographers. So I'll be out and they'll take a picture of me. I have a couple of cool pictures of me, like sitting at a bar, and they look straight up professional shots. And so if I wanted to use something like that, I could, crop mainly, because mostly on the back of a book is kind of a face shot.
Sure, sure.
So if they want that, I'll give it to them. I don't know if I really care one way or the other, but I've used some of those photos for my website. And my website's just basically, I built a template. I built the website. I've never launched it. So when my book comes out, I'm going to launch that. So I got pictures on that I think some of the pictures are pretty cool. They look, I'm not going to say they look super professional, but they're not selfies. They do look like they're quality photos.
Do you have a domain?
I don't. And well, that's not true. I mean, like, have I bought a domain? Right. Yeah, I've got the domain, which is just my name, SeanLandonClark.com. but there's nothing there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, maybe I should upload. What did they used to do back in the old days? Upload like a construction sign, like under construction.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that.
Did you? So you like went through GoDaddy and all that?
Did I go there? No, it might have been GoDaddy, but I'm not sure who I went through. It's a good question. It was I registered I've registered the name years ago, so I've had the name for a long time.
Well, see, just like the consistency with the podcast, it's the same thing with writing a book.
Oh yeah,
that's its own creative process.
Sure.
And it's not just a month or even 2 months. That's a period of time that you've got to be diligent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've written 2 books. I've written another one about teaching. I'm kind of trying to figure out how to deal with this book because it's critical of people. And all the names have been changed.
Certain individual people.
Yeah, and it's a controversial if you criticize public education. I don't think I'm overtly harsh. I try to be more pragmatic. But my experience working in public education has been primarily at like one location. Like obviously, if my real name was on it, it wouldn't be hard to figure out.
Who wrote it?
Well, I mean, no. So under a pen name, it would obviously be hard because I give zero indication of where my school is located. How this podcast exposes a lot of exactly where I live. So it wouldn't be hard to figure out, well, there's a handful of districts or schools or whatever. But hopefully you wouldn't be able to figure it out. But I change names. And matter of fact, a lot of the people in my book that I talk about are amalgamations of people. Like in my book, throughout the book, I have one principal. Okay. Over a 20-year span, I've had multiple principals at my school. So when somebody if I have in the book, if I'm having a discussion about, let's say, something my principal and I are, maybe disagreeing with it, whatever it is, that could have been with one person. But then 5 chapters later, if I'm having the same name in the book, but it could be a completely different person.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and again, I do my best to not, expose certain things. My issue right now, and I have given it to the publisher that's publishing my novel, they're not that interested in it. They don't do it because the style of it is called a hybrid memoir. So I do commentary about public education. I try to explain why public education is the way it is, to direct it towards people who do not work in the industry. The average person out there could read this book and figure out, oh, that's why it looks like, you know what I'm saying?
Right, sure. But
I also go back and forth from that kind of commentary to actual straight up memoir, where it's written like a memoir where I talk about things, interactions with students and parents and other teachers and administration. So they looked at me and they said, well, we don't really want to deal with memoir. That's not what we do here. So I'd have to probably find another publisher. But I know that if I can find another publisher, and I've had some interest. Matter of fact, I actually submitted it to a publisher as part of their annual, like they have like a contest or something, and the winner gets their book published.
Okay.
And I landed on their list. So the person won, and I was one of the runner-ups.
Oh,
and these
that's
bastards,
really exciting.
And these bastards published my real name. Like, oh, here's, the runner-ups. And so when I submitted my manuscript, I was told by the internet, just other, people in writing forums, that if you use a pen name, you want to use your real name. Obviously, if I'm talking to a publisher who's going to publish my book, I can't call myself a fake name. So, but what you do is like, here's my real name. And on the manuscript it would say the name of, the book. And then you put underneath it, writing as, Dave Smith or whatever your pen name is, right? But my real name is on the document. And I don't know, they didn't get it, or maybe it was a mistake. And so when I got the announcement, I'm like, oh my God. And I was kind of elated that I got that, at least made this list. And I went to their website, fucking real name. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Well, nothing's ever come of it, right?
No, because the book's not published. And it didn't, and it just listed the runner-ups. It didn't list like the title of the book or, what the book is about. No one's ever read that book. And again, there's nothing in it that is, I'm not crazy
salacious.
Saying. No, but there's enough things because I theorize why something is happening and why people are doing what they're doing. It's all my theory. Like, I think they're doing it because of this. But people can take that as like, well, you're claiming that's why I'm doing it. I'm not claiming that's why you're doing it. That's my conclusion based on what I'm seeing. So, I know that if I do get a publisher to latch onto it, I'm sure it's going to go through a whole legal kind of process. And this process already takes a long time. So, sorry, I'm still recovering. So, yeah, and I know it takes a long time. And even with the novel, which is all fiction, that took some time.
Are you done?
What do you mean?
With the novel?
It's going to be published in March.
Oh, I didn't know you were done.
Jesus Christ. Have you been paying attention to this podcast?
No, I remember us going over like the flow chart and all the different characters and the subplots and the goals that you were looking for each character.
Well, we're talking about two different things.
Oh, I'm talking about the
tow truck thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So no. This is a novel that I wrote. I don't know when I was going through my PhD program.
Oh, that okay. Yes, I'm aware of that one.
Yeah, I had the same interaction with somebody last night. It came to me like, so how are you coming along on your book? And I'm like, I've told this person, like, yeah, no, it's going to get published in March or April is kind of the target. And she's like, no, I'm talking about the other one. And I'm like, oh, the tow truck thing? And she's like, yeah. I said, oh. So I was like, there's the confusion when people ask me. I am in the process of writing more of a genre fiction book. And I don't want to get into too many details, but it's more of a crime thriller. I put it on the same kind of genre as like a Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. So I'm working on that. It's been a little bit slow, just finding the time. Plus, the way I have it mapped out, it's going to be way too long for that genre. If I continue at the pace I'm writing, and I have it completely outlined, if I continue at the pace that I'm writing, I will have about 115,000 words for a genre that if you start going over about 75 or 80, you got a real problem. So I'm going to have to go into it and figure out like how to condense it down.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So that's actually super publishable. My publisher that's publishing my novel, they're the ones now are like, oh yeah, we're going to publish this book, but we don't. I've got no faith that they really care that much. But when I told them about this book, they're just like, that's something that we're interested in, right? And I think they recognize because genre fiction sells,
right?
If it's romance, young adult, horror, psychological, all that stuff, that's popular fiction. My book is categorized, quote unquote, as literary fiction, which is more of things like Fight Club or something like that, more philosophical, and it's always about audience. It always comes down to audience. If I write a romance novel, the built-in audience. If I write fantasy, built-in audience. They know exactly who to market it to. If you write some random story that has some deep, philosophical meanings or doesn't fit in any specific genre, that's the first thing they ask. Is like, well, who's this for?
Yep.
And
how do we sell this?
Yeah, who's the audience? And that's all they really want to know. So I understand why a lot of people go to self-publishing. They don't want to deal with any of that. I've written something, I like it, as long as you get professionally edited and there's not too many mistakes in it. We would hope there's none, but it's if you're not going through a publisher, you might run into some problems with a typo here and there somewhere along the way.
Right.
But with self-publishing, you can always pull. Most of it's all digital files that are print on demand style. You can just pull it down and say, oh, I got to correct that, and then re-upload it, and you're good to go.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
So ultimately, I might do that with the teaching book. Just because I've just been sitting, I have to update it every year because it's like, I wrote it in 2022, but now it's 2024 and things are changing a little bit. And I either
25.
have to, oh yeah, that's right. 2025. See, yeah, I'm already behind and you have to update it. It's like, and I don't want to spend my time constantly looking at a book that I'm going through. And is that still relevant? Does that still mean something? Or this thing changed and I got to update it in this way or that way, especially I have a lot of stats in it. And that's a pain in the ass where I've bookmarked every stat in that book. And every year it goes by that I don't get someone to latch onto it. I have to go back in the book and say, like, what is that? That stat's still the same. Has something changed? So that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah. Well, that's the, whether it's the podcast or writing a book is to enjoy the process.
Yeah. I enjoy all that stuff.
And, and be present through the process.
Yeah. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, whether it's the podcast or writing or, any of this type of stuff, always is going to keep you sharp. It's a use it or lose it situation with your body. If you don't go to the gym, you're going to turn 70 and not be able to walk. Well, that's not always true, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yes,
it's use it or lose it. The brain is no different. And you see people who, as they get older, they slow down. They're not as sharp as they used to be. And even, studies have shown things like dementia and Alzheimer's. A lot of people attribute that to people as they get older, sometimes they don't actively use their brain as much anymore.
You're just parked in front of the television.
Yeah. And that's no way. And I've never been that way. I've always been like somebody that's kind of creative and I want to do things. And I see something, I get excited about it, and it's no different when I first read a book. I did think when I was a kid, I'm like, man, that'd be so cool to write a book. You know, I saw somebody playing guitar. I said, damn, that's cool. I want to play guitar. You know, I saw somebody on a podcast and said, fuck, I should have I don't have a podcast. Right?
Well, now you do.
Yeah.
And you're 27 episodes deep.
I'm 27 episodes deep, but so are you, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Rocking and rolling.
Rocking and rolling. Let's push it to 28.
Hey.
I have an important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh. So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
And so another episode of the Tilted Table is in the bag. The internet's answer to a question that no one asked. I am Sean Landon Clark.
And I am Joey Joe, the Fracky Mac.
And we want to thank everyone that has stayed with us for 27 weeks.
Yes.
Let's make it 28.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.